Rich people of Reddit who married someone significantly poorer. What surprised you about their previous way of life? Rich people of Reddit who want to marry someone significantly poorer. Hello. I got $12. Now Kith. Honestly, food insecurity. When we were first married, she would get visibly uneasy if the food in the house was running low. She never overate or anything. She was just always concerned about it. A lot of times when she was younger, she went hungry. On the humorous side though, she hates camping. Her answer is always the same. I camped because it was fun. She camped because they couldn't afford hotels. For me, my love of camping started from growing up pool. The only family vacations my single mum and brother and I had were family reunion events several states away. It involved long road trips in a itty car with no AC, but we got to camp in tents and get a break from reality. We also ate a lot better over a campfire than me making Hamburger Helper for my brother while my mum went to bed early. She worked hard to support us and battled with depression untreated for years until she could afford medication. Those trips were good for all of us. I get giddy with excitement after grocery shopping trips. It just feels so good to have enough food. Though I still have to constantly remind myself I'm allowed to eat it if I'm hungry. I'm a grown up. I bought it. That and snacks. We were never allowed to snack between meals and never bought anything extra that wasn't absolutely necessary. My husband had to teach me, you buy something tasty that you don't actually need, and then you can just eat it whenever you feel like. Amazing. I still don't really do it, but it's nice to know I can. The prevailing mindset in his community growing up that insurance was something only rich people had. Not health insurance, mind you. Well, not just health insurance. Auto insurance. Going without it was a way of life for most everyone he knew. My so has to constantly remind me that I can go to the doctor whenever I need to, instead of just hoping I don't die. In California it has been illegal to drive without auto insurance for I think my entire life. I grew up poor and my mum was constantly getting pulled over for expired tags and then not having insurance. Second edit. I am a bit older than most Redditors, so when my older sisters were growing up, insurance wasn't compulsory, and there are a whole lot of older millennials that remember this time as well. It wasn't uncommon for lower income baby boomers to drive around without insurance, because most of their lives it was optional. Also, just for fun I want to add, my mum only got her car towed once, and she did get fines, but they weren't thousands of dollars. I feel so bad saying this, because it is my mother, after all, but she does this thing where if she doesn't acknowledge something, she feels like it isn't real, so when she would get tickets and fines, she would just ignore them. I left the country when I was 19 to do volunteer work, and when I came back, her car was gone. She got pulled over for tags and insurance. They towed her car, because the cops saw that she had gotten pulled over and given warnings so many times and clearly she wasn't taking the warnings as a sign to get her it together. She had to pay a ton of money in fines, go to court, pay to get her car out. This led to her missing her car payment. Then she couldn't get ahead and her car got repossessed. This was the big learning moment that she needed. As awful as this sounds, I think that all of those warnings from law weren't doing her any favors. She has had insurance and paid tags for 10 plus years now, thank God. I love my mom, but she stresses me out. First edit. Rip inbox and to anyone else who wants to DM me to tell me where else in the world driving without insurance is illegal, or tell me I'm an ALA, because my mum was /I'm an ALA, because insurance is so important. Just keep freaking scrolling, I can't take another 8 hours of this it. Oh yeah, it was illegal where he came from too. They just hoped for the best. Sandwiches. When I made him a sandwich I only put one thin slice of meat in it. He couldn't believe that was how I had sandwiches growing up. Growing up, we weren't allowed to just eat deli slices. It had to go between 2 pieces of bread, because that would fill you up faster and save on meat costs. Your comment just opened up a huge window into my husband for me. He's always railing against me for letting the kids eat lunch meat slices straight from the bag, and I've always wondered what the big deal was. You just made me connect this to his pool childhood. Super frugal guy here. At one point in my life I stole a sandwich from Walmart and went back to my house that had no lights or running water. I'd been out of a job for months and was making side money here and there, but nowhere near enough to live on. Ever since that point in my life it's small things like this I tend to pick at. My stepdaughter was eating sandwich meat off a plate and I felt myself go berserk on the inside, because I wasn't looking at it as a snack, but rather I was looking at what could have been 2 sandwiches or 2 meals. I fell in love with my uni best friend who really didn't have any money. When I got a job, for my birthday I decided to plan a holiday and offered to bring him along. He doesn't know I'm in love with him at all, but maybe I should tell him. I really feel this one. My family did maybe 2 vacation type trips in 18 years of growing up, and both of those were to places relatively close by, few hours of driving. If it wasn't for a couple of school sponsored trips, I probably would have never left my region of the US until I was an adult. And I still haven't left the country. I remember in college, there was a school sponsored trip for a class I was taking that involved air travel. The look on another student's face when I told him I'd never flown before was absolutely priceless. Now, as an adult with a middle class white collar job, it still boggles my mind to listen to co-workers talk about all the trips and cruises they take and talk about flying to Disneyland for just a weekend getaway. I can't get myself into the mindset of someone who can actually afford to travel now, because it just hasn't been a part of my life at all. I've never been able to afford travel, but have still been to a ton of places because of my mother's job. She worked at a travel agency and checked out hotels to see if they were suitable for her agency's clients. It's really weird being in the I can't afford to travel and the I've been to all these places camps simultaneously. Hamburger Helper. She hates it, because it would be her meal 5x a week growing up. I had never even seen HH before I went to college and love that stuff. 10 for $10 deals are awesome. My foster daughter was the same way with pasta. She ate so much of it, before we got her, that she hated it. The first meal I made for her on her first night with us, pasta. She didn't say a word and ate her dinner. But later I found out she didn't like pasta because of how much of it she had eaten before. I always took her grocery shopping so she could pick out stuff she liked. After that, she was shocked when she found out red delicious apples weren't the only variety out there. I think she overdosed on Honey Crisp apples when I first introduced them to her. To be fair, Honey Crisp are freaking legit. Honey Crisps, more like Mona Crisps, am I right? You get an upvote just for exposing others to Honey Crisp apples, among other varieties. Hell, anything other than those red delicious monstrosities. Myso said today I made rent, meaning today I've earned enough, accumulated enough to pay the rent, and I realized that this is a monthly accomplishment to someone with no fixed income, salary. Making rent is a huge relief. The other horrible part of having unpredictable income is that when you try to get your financial it together, all the budgeting advice assumes that you get the same amount each week, or at least close enough to work off an average. It made me feel really hopeless when I was there. Oh my god, thank you for saying that. This has always bothered the hell out of me. My husband grew up in a family where they were comfortable, but on a strict budget. 6 kids and mum on disability. My family had no budget. One day we were at the grocery store and he always insists on walking up and down every aisle. I finally lost it, because he was taking so long, and asked him why he did it. Growing up we could only spend $100 a week on groceries for all of us. I always had to put what I wanted back, because we couldn't afford it. Now I can afford whatever I want, so I like to look at everything I could have. Took him 10 years to tell me this. I felt like a terrible person. My dad is a successful business owner now with several houses and multiple sources of income. But he grew up dirt poor when he had parents, and became even poorer when he was out on his own at 14. Think sleeping on the floor of a gas station men's room. To this day he will take a small handful of cereal out of his bowl before he pours milk in, and put it back in the box, so he'll always have some cereal for later. Over 40 years later, and the pain and worry of growing up poor without luxuries like breakfast cereal still affect him. Growing up without money does itty things to people. Traumatic experiences can affect people for years. I remember reading a story about an American steamship in the 19th century that sunk, and the survivors were adrift for days, weeks. If I recall correctly, only one man survived, but nearly starved to death. And until the day he died many years later, he would eat extra food every day just in case. My experience is from the opposite perspective. I was the pool one. It absolutely floored me how my wife acts when something broke, like a car, appliances, clothes, etc. As a child living below the poverty line, replacing a tire or other necessities was a disaster, requiring tricky trade-offs in the budget or just plain acceptance of just how boned you were. When my wife's phone broke, I went into full panic mode while she shrugged and said, "We can just a new one this afternoon." And then we did. In my case, I'm from the wealthy family and my partner grew up poor. A couple months ago, our new TV from a big box store broke suddenly. He had bought the warranty, which I never do. I didn't think they worked. He spent like 5 hours on the phone over 3 days and got us a replacement TV, which is not something I would ever have done or thought of doing, which makes me sound so spoiled, but I learned something for sure.